Hi there. So, I just got the guidance to do this video now. I've thought about this video before. I love when the birds show up for me. But I always felt like, oh, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait until... It was kind of like I was waiting until I was perfect. Which is pretty silly. Since I am always a work in progress and will never stop growing and learning. And there'll always be an excuse, right? And always an interruption, always something else that I could distract myself with. But I feel like this is a really important thing for me to share, and so in lighting the candle for this, it had a hard time lighting. And I just want to show you the flame now. And when it had a hard time lighting, I knew that was showing me that I should start from the place of feeling really disempowered. So I understand that you may be coming here to this video in a state of feeling disempowered, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like it's all too much. Now, I don't necessarily identify as an empath, but I am an empath. And the only reason I don't identify that way is because I'm that plus so much more, and I just feel limited by labels. So I'm not judging anybody who does identify that way. There was a time in my life where I did identify that way, and it's not wrong. And so I'm going to refer to you and me and us as empaths for the purpose of this. But it doesn't mean that you have to identify that way or that I have to identify that way. It's just so that you understand I'm referring to the state of a being when they are easily absorbing emotions of others. Okay? And I think generally it's like a smaller percentage of the population, and we are oftentimes surrounded by people who do not process their emotions, who do not operate with emotions as their priority or primary guiding light. And by the end of the video, I hope to bring around to the point that how perfect that is. But let's not start there. Okay? Being empathic to this degree can be very burdensome, and you can become depleted, and you can feel disempowered, and you can feel like it's a curse. It may be hard to see the blessing in it, and the reason is because no one ever taught us how to use the skill. And I'm calling it a skill because we are much more than empaths. It's just a skill we have as a human being. And if we have never been taught to do it, and we get bogged down by a bunch of energy, it can be hard to remember our skill. And the reason I say remember is because I won't be sharing anything with you that you don't already know is true. And if it doesn't resonate with you as true inside, or if it goes against your experience, please feel free to speak up and tell me that, like in the comments, because I'd like to know, either so that I can include the explanation that I have or learn from you. You know, both of those things are very valuable to me, so I really do welcome your feedback. And I'm calling this a crash course for the disempowered empath, because we're just gonna like hit all the points that I feel like can disengage the disempowerment. Okay, so that means there's a lot more depth that we could go into on each of these things, but we're just gonna get right to the point of them. Okay, that's usually my style anyway. And it helps if I have feedback to know where I need to go into more detail and where I need to refine what I'm saying and things like that. So I appreciate your feedback, your participation, and your presence and your attention here today. Thank you. Okay, so the purpose of utilizing and having access to all of this energy is so that we can alchemize it. Now, the way energy works is that humans need to process their energetic feelings, emotions. If we get traumatized in the middle of processing or are not allowed to process, like it's sometimes in childhood, we're told that, hold on, I just gotta make some room energetically. I feel you all. Boy, do I feel you all. You're all so beautiful, gentle, and a little bit overwhelmed. I can feel that. And I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I understand, and I've been there so many times, right? But I know the way out, and I'm going to talk to you about that, okay? But when we're not allowed to fully process our emotion, and sometimes the parenting methods that we've brought up in, through this era, did not allow us to feel certain things. Like it was not allowed. And so our parents might have said, well, don't act like that here in public, or whatever. So then you're forced to suppress or deny an emotion, and it doesn't get processed. And this doesn't just happen to empaths. This happens to everybody who's parented in that manner. So we have a lot of adults and children walking around with unprocessed emotion in their energy field. And it's not wrong. It's kind of like the lesson plan of what we're going to learn, right? Because now if it's in our energy body, it means that we didn't get to understand it fully. If we had processed it through, we would understand. We would come through it with a better understanding about something. And if we don't process it through, we don't understand it yet, so it gets stored in our energy body. Now, our energy body and our immune system wants us to be able to process that unprocessed emotion. It wants us to be able to understand so we can grow and learn through the experience. And because of this, that emotion, that way to feel, that energy will be thrown forward in our experience to experience again when we are further along in our journey and have more experience and more understanding about other things and maybe more prepared to deal with it. Now at that stage, we may just deal with a layer of it. We may deal with the whole thing. And that is an individual process, and it's not wrong either way. Because from our soul's plan, we may have a reason not to fully deal with it to the root cause at that stage, right? Maybe we have a soul contract with someone else where further along in our journey we're going to activate theirs and them. And without, having it still left in us, we might not activate them. So we might have to keep a little piece of it until further along in our journey. So as it becomes in front of us again, when it becomes apparent to us again that it's happening again, that's when we're having the chance to process it again. So we process it to the degree that we are able. Now how this works is, say, you were going along happily, and then you came into contact with somebody who wasn't feeling very well. Boy, this is a really heavy, I can feel all the collective of who you are watching, and I gotta tell you, you guys are gonna come out of this, and it's gonna be okay. Alright, I need to lighten things up a little bit so I can even talk, because I feel the heaviness of it. Wow. And it's very interesting for me because I was just taking a shower and I was thinking, yes, I'm ready, I'll do this video, and I was full of energy and pep, right? And here I am, feeling this heaviness and understanding the weight of it. And I think that's for the purpose so that I don't skip steps and I don't forget to honor how you actually feel right now, which may be very heavy and very overwhelmed. So it's okay that you feel that way. We will get through this. But I'm just going to run some energy to clear mine for a second, okay? So just take some deep breaths and get into your own meditative state while I do this, alright? I'm just going to clear my own energy so I can think again. My water's way over there, but I really do need to hydrate, so I'll be right back. Yeah, so one thing I discovered when I do this kind of work, that I can feel the energy stream of who my videos reach. And who, like if I post on Facebook, I can feel who's reading it, what they feel about it. It's been very interesting. But I can control that now, right? Like you can see that my vitality is back there and I was feeling very drained, and I will teach you how I did that, okay, by the end of this video. But I want to talk a little bit more about how energy works. And so when energy is unprocessed, we need to process it at a later time. Like we could call that karma. Energy is, karma is a looping energy, right? You can have a looping energy because something was unprocessed and you haven't understood it fully yet, or you can have a looping energy because you used your free will to create an act that will now have to be resolved and understood, right? Sometimes we can act out of a misunderstanding, and that will come back to us, okay? So it's not bad. Sometimes karma is great, right? Sometimes we perpetuate a loop of kindness and giving. Very nice to have those going on. It's all working beautifully and perfectly. And as soon as you learn these tools to empower yourself, it won't feel bad or sad to be an empath anymore. You will utilize this skill to its highest ability. You will go much further than what I'm about to talk about, and you will learn more and more things that are more individual to you. And you'll not have to prove yourself to anybody. You'll not have to be protected. You'll protect yourself. You'll be empowered. You will have your power back. When we don't know that we can process through this emotion, we can get bogged down. So what happens is, say you're happy going along, and then you come around some people who are bogged down and sad, and then you start feeling that sadness, right? The only reason you can start feeling their sadness is because you have not yet alchemized that in yourself, right? The reason that I can push all that energy through myself and alchemize it so that I'm no longer affected by it is because I've learned that. I've understood that I have the power to do that. And I go through the steps to move the energy with my intention in order to achieve that. And had I not known that I could do that, I wouldn't do that, and then I would just feel bogged down, and then I would feel like a victim to that situation, because I would feel like it's not really fair, right? And it isn't. It isn't fair that we would just take on everybody's crap, right? So there's a whole other part of the skill that we can pick up and utilize, and that is to alchemize, okay? And so when you start picking up somebody's something, that is what's in front of you to alchemize. And you alchemize it in you, not them. Okay, your power is always in you. And yes, you may be processing their energy for them, but that is your role. Now, they have a role too, and we'll talk about that later maybe. But right now we're talking about us, so let's just focus on that for a minute. Okay, so what you would do is you would acknowledge that you feel sad, and you would ask your body. Your body is like your guidance system. You know that you have those gut feelings, and you feel the heaviness right within your body. And when you're disempowered, maybe even your solar plexus hurts. And these are all clues that the energy is getting stuck in you and bogging you down. Okay, but also that you have your own wound, which is causing you to be able to be susceptible to that. It's trying to get your attention for the wound in you. Otherwise, when you've healed this wound in you, you will automatically alchemize those things. You know, so there's a certain thing that you guys have just alerted me to, right? And that I know what it is. I know that it must be that a larger number of people are going to watch this video than I'm used to having watch. And I feel confident with a certain number watching that I can alchemize it all. Well, I hadn't yet felt confident in that I could alchemize like a very large number of people, right? I hadn't yet felt that. I've seen other empaths do that. I've seen, you know, other people with YouTube channels have a large following and be able to work that energy and not have it affect them. So I knew it was possible, but I hadn't known it was possible for me yet. And so I just expanded my consciousness to allow that when I realized the number of people. I was like, okay, this is fine. Because I know my guides and my highest self wouldn't lead me into a place that I can't handle. I know that. So I just expanded my awareness around what I was capable of. And that's what I'm trying to help you do here by sharing with you what I've come to understand. And so then by processing and asking myself, like, if I feel this sadness, if I understand that I've absorbed somebody's sadness, but it's also in me, I need to ask in myself and honor that sadness. Like, well, okay, well, why do you feel sad? You know, is there a reason? Like, okay, well, maybe I feel sad because this is such a burden, because I always have to absorb other people's stuff, and then I can't finish my day, and then I have to go take a nap, and I can't do my responsibilities, and there's always more, and it's never ending, you know, like, you can have all this way to feel. And it's like, okay, well, the next thing you need to do is accept that you feel that way. Accept the part of you that feels overwhelmed, that feels it's unfair, that feels really sad, that feels burdened, that feels like it's never going to end. And then give her love. As if she's a child. That part of you is a feeling disempowered, like a child feels disempowered when you've taken away from them their curiosity, their ability to explore and feel good and free, right? When we've shamed or blamed a child, which hopefully in our future we're going to stop doing. But that is what happens. They become disempowered. And so I believe that this would be an echo of a part of yourself, probably from childhood, but not always, that is disempowered due to something of that nature, where they haven't felt like they could or were able to deal with what was going on, right? So now this adult version of you is dealing with what's going on. So you're treating that part of you that feels disempowered and victimized by the situation as a child, but not as you were treated as a child, as what you really needed as a child in that moment. You just needed to be reassured that you could handle it. And you can handle it. Okay? Now, once you do this, for each way you feel, you'll notice that once you've understand why you feel that way, next time you're around somebody else who feels that way, you have compassion for them. Meaning your empathy doesn't automatically get activated. You don't automatically feel what they feel. You have compassion, meaning I know that I got through that, and I know you can get through that too. Now, if this is a person who's going to have actually a conversation with you, as a friend or a client or a family member, and you want to use your empathy with them, this is what empathy does. It amplifies. Empathy amplifies. So it can be useful when you're talking to somebody such as a client to amplify what they're feeling. But that is your choice now, because you've healed the thing in you that made you feel it too. Now you know that you can come out of that. It is possible to understand that energy and not be affected by it that way anymore. And your compassion says, I got through this and I know you can too, but I understand that it feels difficult to go through, right? Because you understand. Now, if you want to turn on your empathy, you sink down to where they're feeling it. Like you really are sinking down, though. From your understanding, you can go back up there, but you're going to sink down into that feeling with them and feel it with them. And this is going to amplify the feeling. And once it's amplified, sometimes that makes it a lot easier to understand. So now you're using your empathy as a skill and not as something that's you're overwhelmed by and that's taking over you. Now that example of just alchemizing the reason that you felt sad is one example. And as you know, there'll be many, many, many things to alchemize, many feelings, many subtle feelings. Like you may want to get in touch with, what feelings there are. Increase your emotional literacy by reading about it, by finding out. There's some charts out there that show, like, yes, there's this layer of feeling, but there's all these intricate ways to feel within those, And so increasing your emotional literacy can help when you're sorting through your own emotions. So you can have a word to pin down what it is that you're actually alchemizing in that moment and where it came from and why you feel that way. And then accept it and love the part of you that feels that way. Now, what you're essentially doing is, when you hadn't processed it yet, you threw it ahead into your experience so that you would experience it again when you were more ready. Okay? And that became a looping energy or a karma. And when you actually alchemize it, when you take it back into you and you understand it, when you've taken the time to do this, all the power that was in the energetic loop, that was your power. Now you're taking it back, and now that power is with you. And that power is what you use to actually decide how to navigate that energy the next time it comes up for you in your experience or another's experience. So you're becoming re-empowered simply by acknowledging, validating, accepting, and loving each individual way to feel. So you do need the space to do this in, and you do need to be part of the equation. No longer can you practice selflessly sacrificing your own needs for the needs of others, right? Some empaths end up being people pleasers or just giving without allowing themselves to receive, because you can easily get overwhelmed when you receive, so you end up being just a giver, right? But that's all imbalanced energy. And the equation must be balanced to include you in the equation. We're not trying to take revenge on people. We're not trying to sacrifice ourselves. We're trying to achieve the win-win-win for everyone. Meaning I win, you win, and we all win. So if somebody's asking you a favor, that can be your guide. Like if your habit is to always give of yourself and they're expecting it, and they're going to be mad if you put your foot down and say no, because you've always done it for them. Know that the right thing to do to achieve energetic balance is to consider the win-win-win. And if what they're asking of you does not consider the win-win-win, then it's not going to be helpful overall. You will actually cause more damage than good. So the win-win-win means if they ask you, say someone that you, like say your best friend wants you to help them move, right? And you happen to be feeling worn out, overwhelmed, and with a bunch of emotions that need to be alchemized in you. And they're just like overwhelming you and you feel so tired. That can often happen when you're bogged down. And that's your body's way of saying, hey, rest so we can process this stuff. Now your friend doesn't know that, and maybe they even have a deadline for moving out. Maybe they're going to act like you're the only one who could possibly help them. But when you look at the equation of the win-win-win, and you realize that, okay, they would win if you helped, and everybody would not win because you wouldn't win. I wouldn't win because then I would have to abandon myself and what's screaming for my attention in my energy body right now. So if you explain that to your friend, I'm so sorry, I cannot help right now. I'm bogged down with some things that I have to process emotionally. I may be able to help you later after I spend some time with myself, or I maybe can suggest someone else to help, but there is going to be a solution, unless that best friend is one of those people who doesn't believe that good things will ever happen to them, who always feels victimized and who never looks at the bright side. Maybe then they won't get someone to help. Maybe they will have to do it all themselves. And maybe God has set it up, or the universe has set it up that way, so that they can realize their own capability and their own power. And maybe you were enabling them the whole time you were sacrificing yourself every time they asked. You were enabling them to stay in this disempowered pattern themselves of never knowing their own power and their own ability to achieve and accomplish what they can do by themselves without needing you. Okay? So it really is this perfect orchestration. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, whatever problem there is, whatever challenge is being traversed, there is a solution. And the solution might not look exactly like you expect it to. Like maybe you think that you've made somebody's life harder and it didn't have to be harder. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe their life did need to be harder. Maybe their life did need to be harder because that would be the thing that said, you know what? I'm not a victim and I handled that just fine without anybody's help. I didn't even need anyone's help. I mean, because honestly, just as a side note, personally, I've moved by myself a few times now in my life, and you can do it. You know, you can do it even if you only have a little car and you have to make 50 trips. Even if you have to donate half your stuff and start again. Like, there are ways to get through very difficult situations, even on your own, with no help. Okay? So we don't have to go through rescuing everybody. Like, there's a divine orchestration happening in the universe. And in order for us to fulfill that to the best of our ability and keep our own sanity and happiness intact, we need to put ourselves in the equation of the win-win-win. Okay? So, once I'm really good at having sat with my own emotions and healed and taken my power back from a lot of these little disempowering feelings and situations that I used to absorb of other people, I started to experiment with energy medicine. You may have heard of Reiki, and you may have heard of quantum healing. Well, I kind of did a cross between those things, and everything that I'm talking about really is just a remembrance. So if it's resonating with you, it's because you knew it already, and you're just remembering it, right? Because to come into Earth, we have to agree to forget these things, and so these remembrances are also things that I've collected from others, where I remembered, a piece of this and a piece of that. So this is all like little pieces. I'm not like duplicating exactly what others have done, but I've taken little remembrances from what they're doing and gone, oh yeah, I can do something like that too. And like I experimented all throughout the way. So it's not wrong if you feel skeptical. If you feel skeptical, test it out for yourself. Like, it's totally right to do that. Maybe you'll discover that you can do it a different way that works better for you. You have your free will and your power to do this on your own, and you can do it. You can do this. And it's been kind of sold to us that being in the role of victim is the safe place to be, because no one really attacks the victim, no one picks on the victim, and the victim is not expected of, because it's the victim. So sometimes we can hide out in the victim role, acting like we're not able to do something, and I'm not saying just empaths, any person could do it. And it's not wrong while we're doing it. Like, I'm not saying, oh, let's point fingers at all the people who are being victims. No. We know that we've all taken a turn in that role, and it served us for the time we were in it, because now we understand it better when we step out of it. So if you're still in that place, it's been serving you while you needed it. And when you're ready, you step out of it. But you probably want to collect some of your power back first by learning to alchemize these energies within yourself and love the part of yourself that is feeling hurt by these situations. Each little part of yourself. A lot of these are traced back to childhood, and so you can ask yourself, sometimes there won't be a memory associated and it's just a feeling, and either way is okay, but you ask yourself, when was the last time I felt this? Like, you notice there's a pattern. Oh, I'm feeling this again. When was the last time I felt this? I got this part of this came from Teal Swan's completion process, and she has a lot of good stuff, and I haven't watched any of her new stuff, but many years ago, she was really what got me started in feeling like I could do some things, and I started experimenting with what she was teaching. But also I read a book about shaman, And I had a shaman working with me in my dream state, and basically it's called soul retrieval, where you're, collecting this looping part of yourself that's still experiencing that energy over and over again. So you ask yourself, when was the last time I felt this? And then when was the first time I felt this? So now you see you're connecting the dots of the loops. Like, okay, now I see that's a cycle, right? And it's like you can now go back to that first time you experienced it to clean that up, to understand it better. To say, well, what did I need in this situation? What went wrong here? Why didn't I fully process and understand what was going on? Maybe it was as simple as mother was too busy to tend to you when you got your finger pinched or something like that, right? Like, well, maybe you needed, like, the older version of you to come in and comfort you. And maybe you can do this with your imagination right now. With your intention and your imagination, you can revisit that moment as a little child when you were hurt and overwhelmed, but mom was too busy and it seemed like no one cared. And you had to suppress and deny that emotion because now mom wanted you to get your shoes on to go to school. And it's like, mom may have been too stressed out in her own stuff to take the time to comfort you, and you needed that comfort through that experience. So now you have to give it to yourselves. So that's why it's kind of like you're reparenting yourself, reparenting parts of yourself. So you just go in the imagination and give yourself what you needed. Oh, come as this adult version of you. Hi, it's okay. Or an angel. Or your stuffed animal comes alive and like gives your boo-boo a kiss. Or your big brother says, it's okay, and rubs it off for you and gives you a hug and says, I know that really hurts when that happens. Or, whatever it is that you needed. You're basically wanting to acknowledge the pain, validate it, which means understand why it's there, accept it, so you're no longer denying or suppressing the feeling that came with it. Like, I felt really hurt. That happened to me. I accept that I felt really hurt. I accept that it's not wrong that I felt hurt, that I was learning something from that experience. I did live through it. Now love the part of yourself that felt that hurt, that wanted to hold on to that hurt. It's okay. It's okay that you felt hurt there. I love you. I understand. I understand why that hurt and why you've been holding on to it. Make it okay. So this part is now with you. It's no longer looping out there. And all the energy and power that it took you to keep that loop going is now with you, no longer needing to relive that. And now the next time, say, you see a child pinch their finger in that way, you're not going to be overwhelmed with the empathy of that feeling like you may have been had you seen it before you had healed. Now you have compassion for this child, and you can offer them the compassion that you have. The compassion says, oh, I understand that really hurts. That really does stink when that happens to you. And, it's okay. I accept that happened. And always validate a child before you tell them to shake it off or that they're okay. Validate their pain first. Because as you know, when we're doing this process, it's all because we didn't get validated on the pain we had. And something in us needed it validated. We needed to understand why we had it. So if we start telling our children, suck it up, it's all right, I've lived through that too, before we validate their pain, and that it is acknowledged that it is painful. Yes, that is painful. We're kind of passing along the pattern of what happened to us. So we really want to kind of change our operating system in a way throughout this process. And this is what makes us feel empowered, right? And so once you're really good at this and feeling better and not so overwhelmed, I use energy medicine to move the energy. So what I actually do is use the violet flame energy. So you just imagine violet colored energy, right? And violet flame is the transmuting energy. So you're going to just brush it through your whole body. Like I imagine it's like a laser, right? Like laser kind of energy. So it goes through all my cells. And I brush it down my whole entire body. And I also picture that there's the column, which called the central channel of our energy body, is in the middle. I make it big enough so that this energy is going to drop right out of me into the ground. And so I'm asking Mother Earth to cleanse this energy for me. She's a wonderful transmuter and she can do this. Okay, so I'm asking her to cleanse this energy for me and return it to me. And so now I imagine this energy coming back to me all cleansed, and it comes in the form of what I call rainbow love water. So it's raindrops that are like rainbows, and they're shining and they're like raining down upon me. Because remember, we talked about the energy of giving and receiving. Both are important. Whatever energy you're putting out, you're going to get back. So in this case, we're doing it with Mother Earth. She's our support here. She's here for us no matter what. And we're grounding that energy into the earth and asking it to be cleansed and returned to us. And so this happens very easily once you've healed the wounds in you. If you tried to do that and it didn't clear, then you know it's in you. It's showing you something in you. But if you can clear it that way, like I just showed you, then you know that that was something else that wasn't you, that your body was just trying to alchemize and you helped it alchemize it. Okay? Because you may still alchemize people's energy without being bothered by it. But if you get a bunch of it, right, if a bunch of people are around you that need their energy alchemized, doing that energy movement actually helps it along, and you just feel so much better. And as far as like protection energy, what I do is I fill myself with light, with source light, with God's light. I fill myself with God's light, and then I push it out from all angles, you know, before, ahead of me, behind me, all angles, and I make a big circle. And then I actually put mirrors on the outside of that circle. So that means that whatever people see in me is actually in them, and it goes right back to them, you know, in the reflection of me. So if they see me as good, they will see the good in them. If they see me as bad, they will see the bad in them. And none of it's going to be alchemized through me in those moments when I'm surrounded by the mirrors. I can take breaks this way, you see? And sometimes there are times that I want to rest, that I don't want to be alchemizing constantly, that I do want to take the time. And I couldn't get to that point until I cleaned up enough of myself, right? So I was fortunate in that I had a lot of time to myself to be still and take the time to alchemize these things in myself and process and understand for myself. You know, if we feel that we've been victimized by someone else, the energy of being victim is in us, and that's the part that needs to be alchemized and loved in us. Okay? When somebody else hurts us, it's showing us a weakness in us. So on a soul level, they're actually doing us a favor if we use it that way. And I feel like this is the empowered way to be an empath, is to know that any hurt I feel, I have the power and the duty and the responsibility to process as if it's mine. Because if I feel it, it's mine to process now. It doesn't serve me in any way to start pointing my finger and say it's their fault, I need to stay away from them. Trust me, the universe will line you up with someone else that has that same way to feel, that activates it in you if you are supposed to take responsibility for it. So we have the power to do this, and all we have to do is use our intention and our will to do it. And do it one at a time, and take your time, and be relentlessly forgiving of self. There's nothing that you've done that cannot be forgiven. You always have to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for any delay, any finger you've pointed, any way that you've shamed someone, any invalidation that you've done to a child or yourself, or anything like that, any rage that you've put out, anything like that. It's all forgivable and all able to be alchemized through us taking our responsibility for it. And responsibility just being the ability to respond. So when you didn't take responsibility for it, it was simply because you didn't have the ability to respond to it. You didn't know the rules. You didn't know the tools. You didn't know that you had this power. No one taught you. Like, and you are literally overwhelmed by the burden of the energies. And I've been there, you know. It's a real thing. It's a real challenge. It's something that really does need our attention to it. It is something that we can do, okay? So I really do love the idea that we're all going to take responsibility for these things, because here's what's going to happen. You know, before, when we're acting as people pleasers and sacrificing ourselves, sometimes we would get our worth from what we did for others. And if we get our worth or any of our value from our role in caring for others, that means that at any time our value and our worth can be taken away, because it's in somebody else's hands. It's on what they think. If they have value, if they find value in us, if they think we're worthy, then we're worthy. No, that's not how it works. We were born worthy. The fact that we're here means that we have value. Nobody can take it away from us, no matter how many times we fail. Okay, so we don't derive our worth from others. Now we are filling up our own cup. Once we've filled up our own cup, meaning we know what we're worth, we've attended to ourselves, we've taken responsibility for what we needed to, we've loved all the unloved parts of ourselves, and we will continue to love the other unloved parts of ourselves as we become aware of them. This is called filling up your own cup. And now when we give from the overflow of our overflowing filled up cup. So we're never going to feel resentful anymore of giving. We're never going to give too much by depleting ourselves, because we're only going to give from the overflow of our cup. We're going to put ourselves in the equation, and we're going to know when we need to fill our own cup up instead of helping that friend move. And so when enough of us have doing this, when enough of us are taking all our power back from those disempowered states, loving the wounded parts of ourselves and collecting ourselves and becoming empowered enough to handle things as they arise, the people who don't do that, you know, there are people who don't use empathy at all and are very self-serving. And a lot of times we end up getting matched up with those people because they have not been processing their emotions, and we start alchemizing their emotions. They're actually on a soul level showing us all our weaknesses. They are actually, if you want to call it the narcissist, is actually showing us the roadmap to our own healing, because they will poke us in every spot that we're weak. And that is actually a roadmap to our healing. That gives us the opportunity to love that part of ourselves. And once we love that part of ourselves, they can't get in there anymore. There's nothing they can do to cause us to feel that way again once we have loved that part of ourselves. And so as more and more of us become aware of these tools and aware of the ability we have to heal, to self-heal, the people who are coping selfishly, narcissistically, will eventually understand that they can't do what they used to do, because they too were trying to get their worth and their value from outside of themselves. They were trying to say, well, if this person's willing to serve me and give to me and love me no matter what, that means I'm still valuable, even if I don't process my emotion, even if I am selfish, even if I'm tricking them, even if I'm lying to them and getting them to do it for me, you know, on the sly. They're eventually going to realize that that doesn't work anymore. As more and more of us stand up in our power as empaths, people coping narcissistically will understand eventually, because they are usually very intelligent, only using their logical mind. Logically, it will make sense and click in eventually that that method does not work anymore. They will have to adapt. They'll have no way but to adapt. And this is how we take our power back. This is how we heal narcissism. This is how we get into those empowered states. And I must say that in doing this and going through this process, I've realized the gift and the perfection that we receive by being around people who are like that. So people who are self-serving or coping narcissistically and not dealing with any of their emotions. You know, because of course they would feel guilty or bad or sad or wrong about hurting people and using people and lying to people if they were using their emotions, right? So they've shut them off, and they're not allowing themselves to feel any shame about doing something bad to hurt another or taking from another's vital energy, right? But in actuality, as empaths, oftentimes we also gravitate towards them because it's easier. And it's easier because they're not always putting their extra excess emotion on us, you know? Sometimes they're just not feeling anything, and so we can be next to them and feel okay without even noticing that there's an extra emotional burden on us, you know? Because yes, our body might be processing things that without our awareness and without their awareness, but our minds are not picking up on that, so it feels comfortable and safe, and it feels like less of a burden to be around somebody who's not expecting of us emotionally and things like that. You know, when we feel emotionally overwhelmed and weakened and stuff like that, you know, maybe they are using that, and maybe all of them are not, you know, comfortable to be around that way. But I think that you can appreciate and understand that sometimes that has been the case. Sometimes it has been just easier to be around people who are not using their emotions because then we don't have to feel that amplification of their emotion. You know, it happens on this very subtle level that's kind of below the surface that we're not even like having to be aware of. And so I don't actually, you know, suggest spending time around them a lot, because it is happening on a subtle energetic level where it is actually draining your life force without even you being aware of it. But I'm just explaining why we actually were a part of the dynamic ourselves. We enabled it because it was comfortable for us too. You know, it was easy for them to take advantage, but it was also easy for us to let them, you know. And the reason I want to acknowledge that is so we can forgive ourselves for that time and move through that time and make a better choice that's more informed now at this time. And I can feel in the solar plexus that there's a lot of discomfort with me saying that. So if you don't feel that there's any use for people who are like that, and you don't, and you want to hold a judgment against them, you can. But I will say that holding the judgment is holding one of those energies that will now loop in your experience. And so you will always, always, always come in contact with another person coping that way, so that you have another chance to understand that in a new way. Because your immune system doesn't want you to hold on to dense energy of hate, grudge, and judgment. Because from God's view, we're all His children. You know, from the universe's standpoint, every experience is valid, even the self-serving ones. Okay? Okay. Now, maybe we've had another lifetime in that role too, and maybe now this is the lifetime where we can all kind of come together and balance things out. We shall see what happens as more and more of us take our power back, and more of us don't serve as the placeholder for their pain, and don't serve as the supply for their need. And as we become more and more empowered, and they see that they can't cope in that same old way, you know, who knows? Well, let's see what they adapt to next. You know, these are human beings, and they have patterns of behavior to cope with. And maybe they'll realize that it just makes sense to go through the shame instead of trying to avoid it all the time. You know? And for us too, like a lot of us have learned to avoid feeling shame as well. So when we point our fingers at narcissists and say they're gross and wrong and bad and all this stuff, you know, that part of us is the hurt part of us that needs our acceptance and love. Once we get through that and past that, what we actually start to see is that narcissist is actually just a child that was traumatized and chose, instead of to feel the pain and sacrifice themselves, they chose to deny themselves the ability to feel ever again that shame. So now they run around doing lots and lots of things to keep themselves busy, to get their reassurance and worth from others, and to avoid feeling the shame. That takes a lot of energy. When we show them the example of what it's like to feel shame, because we can feel shame without dying. It feels really bad. It feels scary. It feels like you're going to be disowned by the pack, and you need the pack. You know, you need some love, right? Well, now we know we're loving ourselves. We're loving ourselves so we can get through it. I'm going to actually ask my oracle if there's anything else I need to say about this, because I can feel the discomfort in the solar plexus. Maybe people feeling very uncomfortable with me holding this view of narcissistically self-serving people. You know, and I do understand there are some that won't come back, that won't adapt. You know, but they're not going to be, you're not going to have a weak spot that will be susceptible to them anymore. You just won't. Yeah, we're all evolving, and the way that we're going to relate is going to change. And what will happen when we're not looping all these karmas anymore, when we're not looping all these coping mechanisms anymore, we'll get in touch with our urge, our primal urge that is driving us. So we got Feronia. This is feral feelings that are feral, are primal, are from inside, our instincts, right? And that's what's going to lead us to what we came to be and who we came to be here. So far, we've just been doing a lot of surviving, right? But we actually did come for a purpose. We each have a way to shine that is individual to us, and that adds benefit to our own lives and the lives of others. And that is beautiful and love-filled and giving and sharing of that beauty, and full of self-worth, knowing our own worth. Knowing that we all have value, even Narcissus. You know, like in the mythology of Narcissus, Narcissus is his own worst enemy. Like yes, he loves himself, but also he literally is doomed to watch his own reflection only. Like, that's pretty boring, right? If the only thing you're going through life doing is looking for someone who can reflect back to you that you're good or you're worthy, you've actually devoted your life to like seeking from others. Like, that's so much energy wasted. But if we didn't know that's what was going on, how would we know what we'd prefer? We know what we do want by knowing what we don't want. So we can learn from the mistakes or from the experiences of Narcissus, and we can learn from the experiences that we've had. You know, every experience that we've had, every challenge, every chaos, every discord, has all helped us learn what we prefer and build the skills and the wisdom that we need to traverse towards our dreams. You know, it's not for nothing. There's a reason why you experienced these things, and even the traumas you held brought you into experiences and reactions and understandings that will all serve you towards the dream and towards the reason that you have come to Earth. You know, things are going to be getting easier and easier the more that you integrate. You can really make a big difference in your life in just practicing this for 1 week. You know, balancing out your own scales, bringing yourself into the place where you can really find justice for your own inner child that has been reliving this stuff over and over again without having its resolution. You're really just being asked now, if you choose to make a commitment to that, to your inner child, to showing your inner child a new day, a new way. Like, that every day is a fresh day, that there's something new to be learned and enjoyed, and the beauty exists in every single day, and that we are worthy of it. Okay? Yeah, a lot of the stuff in this lifetime was just carried over from other lifetimes, and if you don't believe in reincarnation, you could just say it was from earlier in this life, but we're just cleaning it up. And empaths have a big role in cleaning it up. You know, we have a lot of skill. This skill is really important. And we have a lot of power to be harnessed. We know that. When we start doing this, you can feel it. You know it. I know you know it. I know you feel it. We have the ability to turn this all around. That saying, the meek shall inherit the earth. I always like to say, well, we're not meek anymore. You know, that's how we inherit the earth. We inherit the earth because we're not meek anymore. So besides that, besides all that, that understanding and knowledge that I hope that you experiment with on your own and report back, tell me what you learned, tell me how it works for you, tell me the obstacles you're facing, so we can talk about them and maybe do more videos on them, or, you know, I can learn more about you and how it works for other people. But through doing that, you know, there are also other tools we can use, like crystals, you know. Go to your local metaphysical shop, order some things from Amazon, or, you know, wherever you can to, like, get these tools. These hold ancient knowledge, you know. Empaths are actually healers. And this is a new day for our healers. Every day you get a new beginning. You decide. You are empowered. You decide how you want to use this energy, and just understanding and knowing that you can allows you to do it a new way for you. You know, start new whenever you need to. You know, give yourself a lot of breaks. Celebrate how far you've come. That you've come to this point. That you've lived all that you've lived. You've learned what you've learned. And here you are, ready to move on towards your hopes and dreams with the knowledge you've gained, with the wisdom you've gained, with the understanding, with the tools, with the skills that you've honed and experimented with and just gotten really good at. You know, and now you stand up proudly and strongly, and you inspire others to do the same, and you share your knowledge where you can when you're asked, and you just, like, reclaim every little part of yourself that needed your love. That's basically it. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, right? I'm glad to be a part of it. I hope you are too. Let me know your experience, or if you want to talk about it further. I do have sessions offered on my website, juliemandyteller.life, and I'd love to connect with you if you feel called to. I also have a lot of pick-a-card readings on my YouTube channel, and a lot of them address shadow work and things like that, so if you feel called, and this is all a matter of using your own intuition, right? You'll know if it feels right for you. You'll know if it's true for you. If you're doubtful, if you need to be convinced, if you have to get your mind on board with what your heart already knows, just do some experiments. Show your mind. Question your mind. Be in your body. Be with your body. Talk to your body. Ask what it needs. You know, don't ignore your own needs. You have to be part of this equation. You only give from your overflow, so put yourself first. You know, this is the reflection of that narcissist that's actually going to serve us. Putting ourselves first is really important. And we're not going to do it the way they did it. We're not going to do it at the expense of everyone else. We're going to do it so that we can serve others. Yeah. Alright. See you on the other side.